Hello, everybody. I find that quite a hard thing to follow. I don't know about you, but I feel completely humbled by that. And, very moving. Well, we've been looking at care for our soul in this series. I think it's been a great series. And we've looked at how to tend for our souls, the soul at prayer. We've looked at the thirsty soul. And today, we're looking at the soul at rest. Rest for our souls. You know, how do we find that sort of rest? How do Mike and Liz find that sort of rest? In that deep place of us, our core, our center, the real us. I think it's something that we long for, if we're honest. It's wonderful sometimes, isn't it, after a hectic day, to just roll into bed, and to switch off your mind and to fall into a deep sleep for several hours. And we want that sort of rest for our souls, don't we? And we neglect it at our peril. The psalmist talks about when my soul is disquieted within me. I like that word, disquieted. That unrestful, anxious, turbulent, finding no peace, no rest. We've all been there, haven't we? Our souls need God. My mind may be obsessed with idols. My will enslaved to all sorts of habits. My body consumed with different appetites. But my soul will never find rest until it finds it in God. And that will control every other part of my life. My soul, that deep inner place of me that reaches out and thirsts for God, delights in him and finds rest in him alone. Jesus put it like this in John 15, and I think Greg mentioned it maybe last Sunday. Jesus said this, I am the vine, you are the branches. Abide in me. It's living in that intimacy and that connectedness with him. And doesn't it make sense to say, yes, God, I want to find that sort of life with you. My soul needs you more than it needs anxiety and impatience and frustration, pressure and disappointment and discomfort. What a comparison. It needs you more than it needs a religious life. Lots of activity, trying to be good, trying to impress, trying to be significant. It's a life of inner peace, of contentment of soul with my maker and the manager of the universe. And we can say, with the testimony of the songwriter, it is well with my soul. John Ortberg says, the without God life, for whatever reason, is the opposite. It will kill our souls. We're going to read our passage now in Matthew 11, 28 to 30. And you know what is so beautiful about these words? Jesus' words are not complicated. We read tomes of theology maybe, and we can't make head nor tail of it half the time. But Jesus' words we can understand. Let's read it. We're going to read it it's only 2 verses, so we're going to read it in the NIV, and then we're going to read it in the Message. Jesus said, come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Message. Are you tired? Are you worn out, burned out on religion? Come to me. Get away with me and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me, work with me, watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you will learn to live freely and lightly. You know, those words are like honey to my soul. They're sweet words, aren't they, tonight to us? And I can see here that Jesus gets me. He understands me. He knows exactly where I am. And it's not a sort of a sympathy from Jesus patting us on the head and saying, there. It's an immense love and wisdom poured out for us. So we're going to look at this passage and we're going to see three things very quickly that Jesus encourages us strongly to do. Three injunctions from Jesus. And the first one is an invitation, obviously. Come to me, he says. And that's the first command. And whoever we are tonight, whatever is our status, Jesus makes that invitation for every single one of us. It might be that you're feeling pretty good tonight. It may not last. You need to come. You may be struggling tonight. Jesus says, you come to me. It might be that you're somebody here tonight who maybe walked in for the first time. You don't have a clue what's going on. It's all very foreign to you. Jesus is making that invitation to you. Come to me. Come and find out. It could be that you're quite a religious person here tonight. Someone that has come to church on many occasions, maybe. And if you're absolutely honest, you have never actually seen Jesus face to face. The invitation is universal. It is for everybody. It's for all of us here tonight. And Peterson puts it beautifully. He says, especially if you're tired and you're worn out, you're burned out on religion or anything else, you come to me. And it's funny, isn't it? How we look for relief everywhere else, anywhere else but Jesus. And I think sometimes, I think it is for me, we don't really have the confidence that he can do it. We don't really have that confidence in Jesus. We don't have that knowledge of him. And it was the same for the people in Jeremiah's day, in Jeremiah 16:6. He talks about this natural tendency that we have to avoid God. Crazy. He says this is what the Lord says to you. Stand at the crossroads and look and ask for the ancient paths. Ask where the good way is and walk in it. And you will find rest for your souls. But you said, we will not walk in it. And Jesus, you know, he is the way. And when he was looking out over Jerusalem, he said the very same words to the people in that city at that time. He said, I would have gathered you under my wings like a hen gathers her chicks. But you wouldn't come. You wouldn't come to me. We have a choice. We either bear our burdens by taking our own paths in life, or we cry out to God and we accept this glorious invitation from him to come. And we remember this, that we're coming to somebody who is faithful, who is trustworthy and reliable and wise and totally committed to us. And especially when we are heavy laden. Come to me, said Jesus, when you're weary and heavy laden. And what about our burdens? What about things that cause us to be heavy laden? It's like us picking up a haversack, putting it on our back when we're young. And we go through life and we're picking up stones and we're putting them in our bag. And sometimes they're enormous boulders, and sometimes they're little pebbles, but they're causing us to be burdened. And we're going through life picking up these stones. And they all are unwanted, and they cause us pain, and they weigh us down. And tonight, I just want to mention two. There isn't time to mention anything else, but I prayed about this, and there's just two boulders that we pick up on life's journeys that burden us, and that Jesus wants to release us from and to relieve us from tonight. And the first one is rejection. And I reckon everybody here has experienced that. You picked up that boulder when you were young. I picked up that boulder when I was young. In my family, when rejection was a big thing. And you know, the impression stays with you for years after. You know, when somebody says to you, you know, you're not as good as your brother. Or you'll never make anything of your life. And we pick up this boulder of rejection and we put it in our bags. When we're at school, you know, we're not part of the elite clique. Teachers ignore us. We don't get picked for teams. We get bullied, maybe, and we pick up rejection and we put it in our haversack. And then we get into adult life, and we love somebody dearly. And they turn away from us, and they choose somebody else. And in goes another rock. And we are carrying this great, heavy load. You put your own scenario in there. You put your own rejections in there. And the second one is regret. The boulders of regret. You know, the regret when you lost your temper over and over again, and you damaged a relationship. Regret when you lost priority in your life, when you ended up going up a cul-de-sac. Nowhere to go. Wasting time. Especially you young people here tonight. Regret when you lost your innocence. Casual relationships that you suddenly realize was not all that they were cracked up to be. Regret when you did something that you shouldn't have done, and you did it anyway. And then the opposite, when you didn't do something that you should have done. You know, I have got some regrets in my life. And there's one that came very readily to my mind when I was thinking about this talk. I had a friend, and it's very interesting that we've just seen that video. I had a friend called Alan and his wife, and I love them dearly. And Alan had a very aggressive form of MS, you know, multiple sclerosis. And I used to go in to visit this couple as often as I could, a bit of support. And one Sunday night, I was in the church in Southmead at the evening service. And I'd made arrangement to go after the evening service down to meet some friends the other side of Westbury. But the thing is, I had to walk. I had to walk from Southmead, you know, to this meeting. So off I trotted. And I got halfway down, you know, on my journey down. And I went past Alan and Evelyn's road. And something in my head said to me, true as I'm standing here, go in and visit them. Go in and say hi. And I actually physically stood at the corner of their road, looked at my watch, made an assessment. I thought, no, I know what I'll do. I'll go in tomorrow. That'll be the thing I'll do. I went off, rushed on down, met my friends, had a whale of a time, lovely time. Early the next morning, Evelyn called me. And she said, Pam, I got some terrible news for you. She said, Alan died last night. She said he had to sleep in a chair. He'd lost complete control. And what happened in the night was his head fell down like this onto his neck. And of course, he couldn't lift it up. And he blocked his airway. And he died. And I thought to myself, I regretted that I had not listened to that still small voice, but I had listened to the clamorous other voices that were in my head. Regret. It's a heavy rock to carry. And do you know what? When we pick up the boulder of regret, we pick something else up with it too. We pick guilt. And it weighs us down. That's just two things, you know. I'm so glad that, the wholeness course is on Tuesday, because you go to the wholeness course, you will get a comprehensive view of all of this and so much help. So Jesus said, come to me if you're heavy laden and you're weary and you're carrying a haversack of whatever on your back. Come to me. And then the second thing he says, take. Come, take. Take my yoke upon you. And I think that word take has quite a negative connotation. Do you think so? It seems quite more of an aggressive word than receive. Receive, take, doesn't it? And sometimes we use the expression, oh yeah, he's on the take. Somebody grasping selfishly at something. But Jesus uses this word and he says, take this relationship with me. I'm offering. He didn't say, you ask me nicely. No, he says, take it. Be intentional about it. It's a proactive word. It's not a laid-back word. And when we're looking for rest for our souls, we need to be better takers. And Jesus uses this analogy of taking this yoke. I think he must have been walking along with his disciples and a crowd, and you know how it is? He must have looked and he saw the farmer ploughing with his oxen with their yoke. And he says, that farmer doesn't say to the oxen with his yoke, right, you got your yoke on, you go now to the barn and have a nice rest, rest there now for a couple of hours. No, he says, with the yoke on, he says, through your toil and your labor and your burdens, and your circumstances, he says, with me, be yoked with me. We'll do it together. And you will find rest for your souls. I love the way he's identifying with us, carrying the yoke. Couldn't be closer, could you? Couldn't be more intimate. And I read somewhere, I can't remember where, but about the yoke sometimes for the farmers in olden days, if they were mismatched, the oxen, the farmer used to make a yoke that had one end that was heavier than the other. So that when it went on, the stronger one was carrying more of the load. He was taking the heavy end. I can remember on many occasions, Rob and I, we always seem to have to be carrying fridges and freezers up the two flights of stairs to the flats upstairs. Always the fridges were breaking down. And I don't know if you know, you may know with fridges, they've got a heavy end, haven't they, where all the machinery and everything is. And Rob, Superman that he is, used to say to me, I'll carry the heavy end. And we used to go up the stairs with these fridges, and he was staggering up there under the weight of it. And I was rather blithely, just at the top, holding out onto the thing, completely mismatched, roaring with laughter. Quite often, we never got up the stairs, I have to be honest. But you know what? Jesus carries the heavy end. He has carried it. When did he carry it? He carried the heavy end when he died on a cross. And that's why he calls the yoke easy. Isaiah puts it like this. He says, surely he has borne our sorrows and carried our burdens. He has taken the punishment and the mistakes and the sadness and the anxiety and the fear. He's taken the heavy end of the yoke. He calls the yoke easy. You know, the religious leaders of the day, this is really interesting. They talked about the law being the yoke of God's kingdom. The law. But Jesus blew that idea out of the water. He said to the scribes and the Pharisees, he says, you put heavy burdens on people with your plethora of laws, he says, and you don't lift a finger to help them. Jesus' yoke is easy. It's light. And that word, easy, do you know, the only place we find that word in the Bible is in this passage. And Ortberg says this in his book, Soul Keeping. He said, easy is a soul word, not a circumstance word. Aim at having easy circumstances, and life will be hard all around you. The soul was not made for an easy life, but an easy yoke. Being in partnership with Jesus lifts the whole weight, and it's the key to our rest of soul. As long as we keep going without him, our own resources, trying to impress, we will burn out. It is time, he said, to get harnessed with Jesus, harnessed with Christ. So come, says Jesus, quite simply, take my yoke. And lastly, learn from me. I love Peterson's translation of this. It says it perfectly. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me. Work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. Keep company with me, and you will learn to live freely and lightly. And you know, Jesus, they had this arrangement. He was a rabbi. He was a teacher. And the disciples, they followed him everywhere. They watched him. They worked with him. Everywhere he went, shadowing him. Learn from me, says Jesus. Know the things I've said. Read my life story in the 4 Gospels. Live by it. And Jesus, I love those words. Unforced rhythms of grace. Unforced rhythms. It's an unhurried word, isn't it? You know, we're busy, but we're unhurried in here. There's no straining. There's no impressing. It's all through great grace. It's not pumped up and manipulative or manufactured. And Jesus, we can learn from him because he lived in a divine rhythm. Grace was flowing into him. Grace was flowing out of him. And John said in his gospel, he's full of grace, full of it. And at Jesus' baptism, you know, before he had achieved anything, before his ministry had even started, what did God say to him? He said, you're my beloved son, I love you. I'm well pleased with you. And the grace of the Father was flowing into the Son, and the grace of the Son was flowing out to us. We might have to come tonight, like David in the Old Testament, with repentance and sorrow. But we find here in this relationship with Jesus that there's no condemnation and there's no shame. It's unbelievable, isn't it? And I love the words in Ephesians 1 and 6 that says these powerful words. And you listen to them tonight. Paul says, we are accepted in the beloved. We are accepted because God looks at Jesus and he accepts us because of what Jesus has done. Ortberg talks about a cycle of grace. And one of the things he talks about is acceptance. And you know what? Acceptance is the absolute opposite. It's the antidote to what the great boulder that we talked about in the beginning, rejection. Acceptance by God. What more could we want? So I'm finishing. Jesus depended on God's acceptance big time because he faced the most massive human rejection from the people that he had made. And so he says to us, learn from me. Know God's acceptance. There's 3 other parts of that cycle of grace: sustenance, significance, and achievement. I can't go through them now. Get the book and read about it. It's well worth a read. So what is the message tonight? Simple message. If you want that deep, unshakable, unhurried relationship with God, deep in that inner central part of you, then Jesus says this to you: come to me. Take my yoke on you, it's easy. And learn from me. And you will find rest for your souls. That's the end of it now. I pray that later on you'll have an opportunity to just do that, symbolically to come and make the first steps on that journey. But the band is going to sing a song now. And there may be some tonight that you may not be able to sing this song because it is not well with your soul. But as you share now in this song and in this time of celebration and worship, I pray that a door will be opened and you will start on a journey tonight towards that place of soul rest. And I pray that in Jesus' name.